Let's see. How's that? How's that? Can you hear me now? Testing. Let's see. How's that? Yep. How's that? Okay. It is so tricky. I'm telling you, it's very, very tricky. Okay, let's start all over again. 1,745 days since Richard was um, brutally murdered. He was forcibly removed and brutally murdered, and then they didn't want to have another Vanessa Guillen situation. And so, what they, with Vanessa Guillen, it was a very, very sophisticated. This is what Texas EquiSearch reported, that it was the most sophisticated grave burial site that they've ever seen. Um, uh, what they did with Vanessa Guillen, and I'm, it's so hard for me to say this, but it's so important for people to understand, because she was brutally murdered in the arms room. And, the arms room there on Fort Bliss was renovated without any kind of protocol, without any kind of restraint for money. They just did it at any expense on Fort Bliss, the building that Richard lived in. And so that is a main scene. We had a positive hit for K9. Um, and so that is a main crime scene that we are really pushing for, that you know that gets investigated. Um, so with Vanessa Guillen, there's so many situations, and that's why Lieutenant General Sean Bernabe, as corroborated and confirmed by Kayla Cardona, his personal assistant, said they didn't want another Vanessa Guillen situation, because she was also brutally murdered with a hammer in the arms room. She was stuffed in a pelican case, which is like a chest, which, how did that happen? My husband is a physician assistant, and he has his opinions on all of that. His medical trained um, opinions on that. And then they took her remains out to the Leon River, which is right by Belton Lake. It's our stomping grounds. It's that's, I went to school at Temple High School. And so I used to go jump into that lake and go water skiing in that lake. And that was, very familiar to me. I worked as a teacher in Killeen, met my husband in Killeen. So this whole area is very, very, uh, just like home. It's very familiar to us. Um, and what they did with her is they took her out to that river near the Leon River, and they dismembered her and they burnt her up, and they dug a very, very sophisticated and made a very sophisticated burial. They dug a foxhole. They put her remains at the bottom of it. They covered her with lime. Lime is to get rid of smells and things like this, we've been told. And then they covered her with concrete, and then dirt and leaves and everything. And that should have prevented anyone from ever finding her. But that's not what God wanted. It was really a miracle. It was animals that dug around that, and line workers saw these animals and were curious, and that's how they found Vanessa Guillen's remains. So what they did with Richard is, because that they found her remains at the end of June. Richard, and they came out in the news. I believe it was the 5th of July of 2020, where they announced that indeed it was her remains. And Richard, of course, was murdered in July of 2020, and they did not want another Vanessa Guillen situation, so he was forcibly removed. He was brutally murdered, being the arms room as to us the crime scene, and then proceeded to, like Vanessa Guillen, dismember him, but put in, and this is so cartel tied, right? This is so apropos to what cartels, um, you know, how they operate, and put, and of course, we have confirmation that his unit was connected to the cartel. So, and up to no good, and up to no good with the criminal trafficking. So they dismembered him, but instead of putting him in one burial site, they put him in multiple. And because it's right there at the border, one of those burial sites was in Mexico. And that's why you had the very confusing testimony of the cashier, that had been face to face with Nadal Baim, who told her that Richard was, that she could take down the flyers of Richard, that, the search was over, he has been found, and that he is dead. Shh. And he was found in, in Juarez, Mexico, but they were looking in 5 locations. And she said that's where she was confused. If they found him, why were they looking in 5 locations? And that's because they found partial remains. And that's why we have these autopsy reports, not just one autopsy. And so it's really a horrendous crime, and it being connected to Lieutenant General Sean Bernabe, not wanting another Vanessa Guillen situation, and of Kyla Cardona being his personal assistant, and his. I guess it's his mother's maiden name, Cardona, because he's Sean Cardona Bernabe, and her being with I Love Crack Eric Johnson, and then being, very connected to Leilani Hart, which is, convicted criminal, being the mother of Richard's platoon leader, Dallas Hart. So, and they always claim, it's crazy that, you're surrounded so much with false narratives and false witnesses, and that's what this whole thing is in the Walmart case. And I just posted up the information that we're getting, because this is very, very important, and it's breaking news. And I'm going to make a breaking news post about this. But it is something that we've been working on, trying to corroborate, and it has been confirmed by a very, very, very high source. Um, Yesterday I mentioned that the lead investigator, um, in the Walmart mass shooting case, had a mental breakdown. He was escorted by the FBI to a retraining facility. Then, after that, he left the country. Him and his girlfriend left the country, and they're no longer in the country. And so, uh, but one thing you need to know is that the DPS, the Department of Public Safety, that leads these investigations, they have a very top notch, sophisticated forensics lab. Okay. They have a department, a forensics department, lab, that would just, it's it's just a wowzer. It's just amazing. The highest tech you can imagine, the highest tech, the most modern. And that with the AI out, and it can create all kinds of pictures and do this and do this. Well, the forensics is all this very high tech lab. And in the Walmart mass shooting, it has been confirmed that after 3 years, there was still no forensics report for the Walmart mass shooting case. You're talking about the all of the shell casings, the bullet wounds, the bullets from the bullet wounds, the any kind of bullets that were missed and in the Walmart, and all of that. Um, There was no forensics. 3 years after, there was still no forensics report. That is like jaw dropping because normally it would take what a few days, right, to do a forensics on trajectory, on bullets, on what kind of weapons were used, how many shooters, all of that. What did those bullets come from that gun and everything? And that is very, very important in this because the same people involved in the Walmart mass shooting and the whole reason this is all one big case, okay? It's all about the criminal trafficking. It's all about the cartel tied military criminal trafficking that's right there at the southern border that was infiltrated and embedded in the judicial system with the like the Mayella Crucius family. Um, and of course, Mario Raskin Ortiz, the medical examiner, with the generals like General Bernabe and other generals, and other people that's on the base, right? So, and then also the politicians are also part of this, and other important officials. And so, this is all one big, huge case. And of course, Richard was a witness to it. Okay, just like um, just like Glendon Oakley Jr. He was a witness to it, just like in this lead investigator that fled the country after having a nervous breakdown or mental breakdown, having been escorted by the FBI to a retraining center, and then just saying, "No, I'm leaving the country." Um, so, and there's so many more. Look at so many people in this case, and how many have died, how many have had mental breakdowns. And I can tell you for a fact with my own eyes that people were shaking in their boots, literally shaking, right? And that there was just a cold blooded attitude, which is a defense mechanism for being, mentally trying to mentally deal with a really bad situation, right? A very horrible situation. People get very cold blooded, right? And you can use your own words for it, but they absolutely, Anicia, thank you so much for coming on and the prayers. And I hope you had a wonderful Mother's Day. So this is huge, huge news that there was not even a forensic report ready 3 years after the incident, the massacre. Okay. And so we, of course, this week has been so, so busy because of all the evidence coming together. Now it's gelling, y'all. It is gelling. And we received an article today from a Mexican um, uh, publisher, a Mexican distributor, yeah, a media outlet, and they were absolutely putting the blame at the feet of Veronica Escobar. And that was just amazing to read. So, people are starting to understand all the work that we have done. They're starting to get it that this was just a horrible. um uh, False narrative, um, nothing, it was a setup. It was a setup, um, and a bloody setup because, just because something is orchestrated, this is a cold-blooded murder of many individuals for uh, a political shift. They wanted a political shift away from the audits and the investigations, to hit President Trump with the worst type of accusations, and then make the heroes to be like Beto O'Rourke, Chris Cuomo, Ernest Christopher Grant, who I'm going to talk about right now, Lionel Gutierrez, Donna Sifford, and these false witnesses, and they're absolutely false witness. And one person, a fire dispatcher, came on to, and I want to thank her very much for coming on and letting us know about an article, letting us know about her experience on that day as a 911 fire dispatcher and what all happened. She gave us a lot of gems this week. We're still working through it, but it led us back to, of course, Ernest Christopher Grant and the video that we presented to everybody. Also led us back to, reviewing all of the victims and those that were injured that survived. And because in the video that we released, where are the injured survivors? Where are the casualties? Okay, you can say, okay, there's a casualty, like the baby looked like it was in the bathroom, but there's mixed reports on the Unchandos, right? The Unchandos with the Unchando baby, because some reports say they were at the checkout, the self checkout. At the Walmart, and then some say like in the bathroom, or some say in the bank. So, because we haven't had a trial, because the forensics is not out there, right? There's been a seal, and of course the many judges on this case, because don't forget about Judge Burrell at the beginning, and then Judge Medrano, and then Judge Guadarrama. And there's been, all kinds of things happening in this case. But to have the seals on this case is very abnormal, and they're unlawful. Okay, the seals on the case are unlawful, and the gag order was unlawful. And so this is really important for people to understand, because this is your government. This is what you pay for, and they're supposed to follow the law, and they're supposed to be transparent to us. Of course, national security and all that. But when it comes to this case, just like other massacres, this case is so different because of the protection, um, or the shield that they have put up with the seals, to prevent people from looking at the case. So we've spent over 20,000 hours putting whatever has been released, and that's why we thanked this dispatcher the other day. Because it adds to the information that we have already, to piece together what has happened. And what's very, very clear is that this was absolutely orchestrated, that this was a cartel tied, orchestrated hit, and that Alexander Gerhard Hoffmann wrote, the German national, that he was absolutely, and there's others too, okay? There's others, but this one has been confirmed, that this absolutely was, he was targeted, and this was targeted for execution, okay? Because when you do mass shootings, you don't do headshot. You just don't find any others with headshots like this, okay? This is professional execution. And so, with Mr. Hoffman's ties to Fort Bliss, with his ties to Mexico, with his ties to other organizations that absolutely are cartel tied, with his ties to 3905 Bliss Avenue, which is cartel tied, then there is a motive, and it is not absurd to think uh, that, oh my gosh, you've just confirmed that this was a targeted execution, and that, there's no evidence behind it. There is lots of evidence that corroborates that this was indeed, um, uh, he was targeted. And the question is, um, still out there. Why was he such a risk to the cartel tied criminal trafficking enterprise that was going on connected to Fort Bliss? How was he a part of it? How was he a risk to it? And why was, uh, the motive is there, and there's a lot. There's a lot, and that's going to be coming out where as we corroborate it all, uh, it'll come out. But as you see in the video, it's not to be disputed where his body lay. His body lay right there across the entrance from McDonald's on the west entrance of the Walmart. So, right there at the west entrance of Walmart, where McDonald's is, there his body lay. And that's very important because if you wanted to hurt people, um, uh, just because you were hate filled or something, you didn't have to go far. You could go right into the Walmart, okay? I mean, right into the McDonald's. But that's not what happened, okay? That's not. So the whole narrative about it being a hate crime. Is it a hate crime? Yes, of course it's a hate crime. It's a hate crime against this German national for sure. It's a hate crime against Memo Garcia. It's a hate crime against his family members. Hate crime against the Anchondos. A hate crime against, many, all the injured, the 45. Of course it is, but hate crime in the definition of, racism and white supremacy and everything, absolutely no way. It's not a hate crime, okay? Not a hate crime like that at all. That has been absolutely debunked in so many ways with evidence, so this is very, very clear that as you come in, you see the man that's taking the video, or you hear the man taking the video saying there's a man there laying down in his blood. He's not saying, "Oh my gosh, there's been lots of injured people, lots of people that's been hit." He did say he heard gunshot everywhere, right? But there was, from his knowledge, and here he is having the presence, right? He was there, and he has the presence of wanting to even videotape it, and so he videotapes this front west entrance where the soda is, where the groceries are, where the chips are. And that is very, very important because the other entrance, the east entrance, is not where the chips are, not where the soda is. It's the entrance where Alexander Gerhard Hoffman lie there with half his head. Okay, he was targeted. He was targeted, and it was a headshot, and it is just the most horrible, rottenest thing that we have to watch these videos. We have to analyze them. We have to ask experts to analyze them for us and tell us what the heck is going on, because this kind of orchestration of this kind of crime cannot be ignored. It cannot be just, let's just give Patrick Crucius a hug and sweep it all under the carpet, put him on a plane and say goodbye and just forget about the whole thing. No, this cannot, no way can this go unanswered when there is so much injustice and so much horrible, horrible crime that happened on that day. And I think everybody will agree that it was a horrible, horrible crime. And they cannot be allowed to get away with this. Okay. And so, and why is it important that Alexander Gerhard Hofmann was laying there in that front entrance where the sodas are. You can clearly see that's where the sodas are, that's where the chips are, that's where the groceries are. You can clearly see it in the video. And well, it's because of Ernest Christopher Grant, who is a veteran um, with close connections with El Paso, close connections with Dallas, close connections with Fort Bliss, close connections with others, um, and and of course, a very political person. And I call him the media sweetheart, right? The media sweetheart. And because he got so much coverage, he got so much media coverage. You would think that Richard, being the hero that he is, absolute hero, y'all. Yeah, I mean, it's just, it is absolutely evidence shows that Richard Halliday, the Fort Bliss whistleblower soldier, uh, that was murdered in the line of duty on Fort Bliss, absolute hero for reporting the criminal trafficking that was cartel tied and military tied right there on Fort Bliss and in El Paso and on the southern border. And, where is all the media coverage for that? But Ernest Christopher Grant got tons, tons of stories. And, they've slowly been trying to take some away or, take away his picture of when he was arrested. And he was arrested and pled guilty for dumping toxic waste or dumping trash. And it was very, very serious because he went to prison for it. Um, so, you know, um, they're kind of taking that picture down. We have it. I posted it up. Um, and the big thing you have to know is that he has a prior record and he had outstanding warrants. That's why he was arrested at the White House. But on August 3rd, 2019, he says that he was in the Walmart shopping for back to school with his mother. Okay, with his mother. And that he went to the front entrance. Okay. This is the west entrance where Gerhard Hoffmann's body, okay, that he went to that entrance and he saw the shooter popping people off in the parking lot. That's what he said. Okay. Now, that parking lot is a huge parking lot. If he saw shooter popping off people in the parking lot, then they needed to lock that door. They needed to lock both of those doors. Why didn't they lock the doors? Okay. Because it started in the parking lot. That's my first question is what the heck, because uh, that parking lot is so big, it would take a long time for a shooter to work its way to the front door. Okay. Enough time to close the doors and lock it, right? So, but there's, uh, so the shooter then entered in that way, right? Um, and Christopher Grant says, then I started lobbing soda bottles at the shooter, lobbing soda bottles, and he's in the hospital demonstrating how he was lobbing the soda bottles at the shooter. And Patrick Crucius is clean, right? Totally clean t-shirt, totally clean pants, totally clean shoes. And my first response to that was, when you shake up soda and you're lobbing soda, it sprays everywhere. So there should be a mess. Well, in the video, there's no mess. There's no mess. And so, of course, we know that the El Paso Police Department had to come out and debunk Ernest Christopher Grant's story because the evidence does not show that that ever happened. Okay. So, but the media treated him, just with, a red carpet with a red carpet. And I mean, and not only the media, but Beto O'Rourke, but Chris Cuomo from CNN, the CNN anchor, and of course, Governor Abbott. Governor Abbott uh, did that. And then, of course, he went to the White House. When he went to the White House, he was arrested. But Texas didn't want to take any action against him. So, eh, you know, it's very, very clear that Ernest Christopher Grant is more than just a victim here, okay? He's more than just a victim. He has a criminal record, and now he lied about the soda, okay? He lied. He lied, okay? Now, if you've read the stories and his account, um, we're here. We're keeping posts. We want justice for Richard. Thank you so much. All my respects to Mrs. Halliday. None resting every day, asking, "Where's my son?" Just like an amazing mom will do. Thank you so much. Absolutely. And happy Mother's Day to you. Um, so, absolutely, that's been debunked. And, and it's very clear that Ernest Christopher Grant may have lied about other things. And if you read the accounts of what he said, they gave me nightmares. Okay. I'll never forget it. It's January of 2024. And I'm reading all the stories of Ernest Christopher Grant's account of what happened in the Walmart, not even knowing about this video at the time that absolutely debunks what he says. But what he was saying, and you can imagine, you can understand the community and the world reading it and being so disgusted and angry, right? I mean, they want to instill in you an emotional response. And and here I am in January already knowing that they lie about so many things, but I'm reading about his account, and you just get emotional, right? How dare the shooters do this, right? um but the video really debunks just about everything that he says. It just debunks everything. Look, there's no chaos in that video except for Alexander Hoffman laying there, right? And of course people are crying, and then you have the baby running out. That is really some wow, right? The baby, who is that carrying that baby, right? And why isn't he going to the police, right? Why is he just running off with this baby? Who is that? That's uh, there's so many questions all the time, and you have to stay focused on the point. The point being that this was orchestrated, and that the uh, the stories on what happened in the Walmart were lies, and that the dispatchers were even not given briefs. This is what the fire 911 dispatcher revealed to us, that they were not given briefs, that she was taken off of the case and replaced by another group, and that private ambulances were called to go to the Walmart. Can you imagine that? Private ambulances? Who own these? Who own these private ambulances? I mean, there's so many more questions. But in that Walmart, there's no soda bottles and no soda laying on the ground. There's, you know, no chips. If the bullets, because Ernest Christopher Grant got hit in the back twice with an AK-47 style weapon that went to his spine, by his ribs, right? By his ribs. And it went through chips, chip bags. That would blow up the chip bags. You would have chips everywhere. And then he would have, of course, a loss of blood. And then he said he made his way to the automotive department, where he was treated there by Donna Sifford, the CBP officer, the Customs and Border Protector officer, and that then he was met by an off-duty El Paso police officer. There's no such thing as an off-duty El Paso police officer, okay? They're always on duty, they always carry, right? And then, of course, in Walmart, there's always weapons. So if you forgot your weapon, go get a weapon. There's weapons there, there's bullets there. Fight for your life, right? Fight for the lives of all the innocent people. You have 23 dead and 22 injured, and you have a CBP officer, you have a off-duty, quote unquote, off-duty police officer, and they're not fighting for these victims. But there's no sign of the victims there. Where are these victims, right? I'm not saying the victims didn't exist. I'm saying, where are they? Where were they killed? Where were they killed? And because the video shows the baby, the video shows the German national Gerhard Hoffmann, Alexander Gerhard Hoffmann. Um, it does not show bags being exploded, um, soda. It doesn't show, and nobody else is going, "Oh, go here. We have an injured person here. We have an injured person here." There's no like people coming out with scraped arms or whatever. Everybody looks shaken up but healthy as they're leaving. And, eh, eh, so the evidence is not corroborating Ernest Christopher Grant's story. And but what is being corroborated is that they want a false narrative. Okay, they want a false narrative. So he's in the hospital, and my husband's a physician assistant, and people might not know this, but he was also a perfusionist, which means he ran the perfusion machine at Walter Reed, right there in Washington, D.C. We were there for 5 years before he gave up being a perfusionist and went back to being a physician assistant. And and my husband's a family man. It's being a perfusionist, you're working nonstop, early in the morning to late at night. It's a hard job because you're doing open heart surgery, you're doing heart transplants, lung transplants, because a perfusionist is the heart and lung machine. So it acts as the heart and lung during these major surgeries. And so, he has some experience in these surgical situations and the recovery of them and everything. So being shot by an AK-47 style weapon right in where all your major organs are with these kind of bullets is very severely damaging. And so that he even survived because of the blood loss and the damage and everything, is a miracle. It's a total miracle, right? It's a total miracle. And so he's in the a grocery section with that kind of injury, two bullets. Don't forget, it's two bullets. And he's going over to the automotive. Everyone knows how big this Walmart is. It's huge. And just to survive that, right? And then, stop the bleeding. Uh, and then to get into a truck, into the bed of a truck, and to be taken to the hospital. Anybody that's had surgery will know that any kind of movement like that is absolutely so hurtful to your body. And it is, it's just, I can't even believe that he survived. Okay. And so then he was put into induced coma. So says the articles. You can look them up. I'll post some of these articles. Um, uh, induced coma. But then on the 5th, so this is happening in the midday of August 3rd. By the 5th in the morning of the 6th, they're already, Chris Cuomo's already in there in his hospital room. He's even, lobbing with his arm, doing this motion, giving this interview where he's upbeat with Chris Cuomo, the CNN anchor, and Donna Sifford is visiting with him, and then the next day, Guterres, Lionel Guterres, the off-duty police officer, is meeting with him there, and he's sitting up. That would be on the 6th. On the 6th, then on the 7th, Beto O'Rourke is meeting with him, and Beto O'Rourke is, calling him a hero and everything, and they have the El Paso Strong already in the works, right there on the table with him, El Paso Strong. Yeah, and then he gets interview after interview after interview after interview. And he also then, by November 2019, he's meeting with Governor Abbott. Governor Abbott approves this meeting, knowing that he's a criminal, knowing that the forensics is not out of the shooting. Can you believe it that Governor Abbott would give him time to talk about gun control? Okay, that's what they were talking about, gun control. Um, Give him time when he is a criminal, when he has been declared to have lied to the media, to lie to the world, knowing that the Mayellas are part of this, knowing, y'all, it is just, um, it is, it is so clear. It is so clear. And where is Veronica Escobar in all of this? No forensics report, a known liar with an open warrant for arrest is meeting with the governor of Texas. Look, the governor of Texas, that position is one of the most powerful in the United States. Okay, it is one of the most powerful positions in the United States because that AG, right? That Attorney General's office is only second to New York. Is only second to New York. It is huge. uh, everything is big in Texas, right? And so for Governor Abbott to not do his homework and to allow this false narrative that divides a border people, the world, really. Because when you read what Ernest Christopher Grant said about what happened and how these Hispanics were begging for their life, and you have at the front door a German national, a German national, and I absolutely know that Hispanics have been hurt. Absolutely. But what I'm saying is that the evidence doesn't show what Ernest Christopher Grant alleged happened. The evidence doesn't show it, and they don't even have a forensics report. We don't even know really what happened to the Anchondo baby in that Walmart, what happened to his parents in that Walmart. Um, I'm going to put out, we've been working on a map uh, as best as we can do for you, as best as we can do from all of these articles where these people were in the Walmart, okay? Because they were outside, they were in that area uh, at the west side where the groceries are. Some were at the pharmacy. Remember, they were locked behind the pharmacy. One lady was trying to get into the pharmacy, and she was denied. Then you had many, many at the self checkout. Well, that video doesn't show any victims at the self checkout. It's crazy. And that hallway that everybody would have to walk on, it is shiny floor. It's a shiny floor. Something is not right. We're being lied to. Where are the injured? Where are the victims? Besides the baby, besides the German national. And here you have Ernest Christopher Grant saying he was a victim, but there's no evidence of his story in the video. And then he was saying the worst kind of hateful crimes, and here he is, a known liar, just like Leilani Hart, a known liar, just like Rosa Maria Valdez Garcia, a known liar, just like Danae Katzen, a known liar, that the media uses to be media sweethearts and to fool us, to con us, to give us a false impression of what happened, and that, to put unease in our community, to create chaos in our community, to create more crimes in our community because people get nervous, people get shaky, people get offended, people get in distress and get depressed and all of that. When you read this and you have lies around you constantly, it is so damaging to the relationships in our life. And we know that with the whole COVID thing, right? That it was so divisive, and that now it's coming out that it was I don't want to go into that, but it's so divisive. What the media does, the media, um you can really blame it on them, but you know what, it is the police job to give them the right info. It is Veronica Escobar's job to give them the right info, to have these hearings, to give us the truth. It is the Department of Public Safety, the Rangers, the main investigators to give us the right information. That's why you have the police chief coming out and giving us information, and we go and look to their information because it's their job to give us the true account. It's their job to give us the forensics report. And 3 years later, no forensics report, and to allow that kind of false narrative to just fester and fester. And then, you have the sentencing, and they're like, oh, I hope you're damned to hell. But then all of a sudden, Sam Madrano's like, you want to hug him? You want to hug him before we put him on a private plane or a DPS plane? We can't put him in a van. We can't put him on a bus, but you can hug him before. But they allow 3 years of this hate-filled rhetoric that is false. It was false. And now they want us to hug him and sweep it underneath the carpet, no, when he has even admitted to killing one or two. But because they want to cover up the other shooters, then we're just supposed to hug him that killed one or two. Let me tell you, he if he just even hurt that baby, I don't want to hug him. And, this is the garbage that they're giving us for our millions and millions of dollars of taxpayer funded. And, you know, and then listen to this, Madrano wasn't even on the case at the beginning. It was Burrell, Judge Burrell. And so who did Joe Spencer even talk to when he said he talked to Judge Madrano and Judge Guadarrama that he wanted an open checkbook? He doesn't want nickels and dimes. And he gets that, he's doing that before, like the day of the event, but Burrell comes on. How did he know? This is not random. It wasn't randomly picked that Joe Spencer came onto the case. It wasn't randomly picked that Burrell would recuse herself, that Sam Madrano could come on. It wasn't randomly picked that they would use the federal courthouse and Judge Guadarrama, who the Mayellas manage him. It wasn't randomly picked. El Paso wasn't randomly picked. They absolutely, and that Silla Vista Walmart wasn't randomly picked. They targeted, and the death of these individuals wasn't randomly shot because of a hate crime, because of the color of their skin. It was, they were absolutely targeted. And we want to know how many were targeted and what their backgrounds are. Because we know that Hoffman's ex-wife, who they were divorced in 2001, committed fraud and tampered with documents, so much so, and clearly knowing how to tamper, knowing where to go and what to do to tamper with the documents, to commit the fraud, to get hundreds of thousands of dollars in Walmart mass shooting victims funds. Okay? So we know that. And she's not a widow. And even in German newspapers, and I read German, the German newspapers call her the Witwe, the widow. And he's a German national. So if she's committing fraud here, how else is she committing the fraud? How else? And who else was being targeted? And where did all that money from the victims fund, where did that go? What really happened here? Because you've got to follow the money, but you also have to follow the forensics. And yet 3 years and no forensics. And you have Ernest Christopher Grant giving us a story that is a bunch of baloney. It is a bunch of baloney. With Donna Sifford, bunch of baloney. With Lionel Gutierrez, a bunch of baloney. Sorry, it's a bunch of baloney. And it's not me just saying it from my intellect that it's a bunch of baloney. It is evidence confirms it's a bunch of baloney. Evidence confirms it. And we have to be big enough to say what the evidence confirms. And we know that this same group that was giving us baloney, bloody baloney, is the same group that had to take out the witnesses. So was Alexander a witness? We know that Richard was a witness. We know that Glennon Oakley Jr. was a witness. And what were they witnesses to? They were witnesses to the cartel-tied military criminal trafficking that was going on, that was being audited, and that they and I'm thinking, you know, if it's clear to us now knowing this information, it was clear to Glenn and Oakley, it was clear to Alexander, it was clear to, um, I'm just wondering if the Enchandos were witnesses. It was clear to Richard. Richard said it was very, very bad. What was going on was very bad. And, it's beyond words. How does Alexander Gerhardt, how does Glennon Oakley tell the public and how does Richard tell the public the level of crime that's going on when the media and when Governor Abbott, when Senator Cruz, when Veronica Escobar, when other narco politicians or other officials, when they're shaking in their bones or they're compromised or they're part of it, um, are not doing their job. When Sam Madrano just wants you to hug the murderer, and let the other shooters, uh, be in the blind, be ghosted, and then Judge Guadarrama, um, being Mayella'd. He was absolutely Mayella'd, Crucius Mayella'd. Um, you know, and then Mayella's being in the church with the prosecutor. What's his name? Stephen. Oh gosh. Um, I haven't said his name enough. I need to say his name enough so I can remember it. But he was part of the prosecution for the federal case, and the Mayellas are, uh, fellowshipping, getting ready for their wedding. I, yeah, we have to get to the bottom of this. When Beto O'Rourke is not calling this out, and what about the doctors? I mean, everybody is so afraid of this huge group, rightfully so. But I think that now, almost 5 years later, God has provided us with an opportunity together to stand up to this gate of hell. Absolutely. This criminal, cartel tied military trafficking operation. He's given us the opportunity to stand up against it. And now we have even the media of the first ones out now, the first ones to find a backbone, to understand what's going on. And they understand, but there's a language beyond, there's a meaning beyond the language, right? They can read the tea leaves. And of course the media is compromised. We know that. But there comes a time when they say, "Oh, now we're liable because the evidence is too clear. Now we're liable." It's kind of like the military. They had no choice but to admit to what the evidence showed, that Richard was murdered in the line of duty on Fort Bliss. And now they're saying Veronica Escobar is liable. We can no longer support her. That's what they're saying. And the first ones out are not American media, but Mexican media. And if you speak Spanish, God bless you. If you're in Mexico, God bless you, because let me tell you, they have been through the ringer more so than Americans. And so the people are sick and tired of it. You cannot have those above the law, right? You can't have those above the law. And I hope I expressed myself, because this is beyond language to explain. And that's why Glennon Oakley Jr. had a very hard time the next day, the very next day, telling everybody what was happening. And it was, Richard, Mom, it's just so bad. It's just so bad. Because it's beyond our comprehensive uh, language at the time to really believe that this would be so demonic, really. There's just no, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of children being trafficked. You're talking about weapons and ammunition being trafficked, stolen. You're talking about the traitors and the treasonous acts of our generals that wear 4 stars and 3 stars and 2 stars, the ones that we've given everything to and entrust with our sons and daughters that volunteer to serve this country. And so to hear of the level of their crime, and that they are willing to shed our sons and daughters' blood for their pocketbooks, for their criminal network, it's just, it can be hard to really understand. It can be really hard because it's so unpatriotic. It's so opposite of what our country is all about, has always been about. And now it's this deep state that is very evil and has gripped and is embedded in our system. And people think, oh, it's so bad, it's so corrupt. What can we do? Well, you can never, ever give up. That I can tell you what not to do. You never, ever, ever give up. Never. You always march forward. You always take up the cross. You always say, Satan, get behind me. That, I mean, Jesus was so, especially coming into Pentecost, you see that the lessons that Jesus is giving, they're sitting up there, his disciples in the room, right? And they're like, what do we do now? We just denied our Lord, and now he's risen, and he appears to them, and they're like, oh my gosh, let's fall on our bellies, and what do we do? And what happened? They went out. They went out with courage in a world that was, talk about, uh corrupt. It was so corrupt, so corrupt. And they changed the world. They changed the world in the power of Jesus' name. They changed the world. And they're forever remembered and forever praised, even in their imperfections. And you see that on Mother's Day, reading the Magnificat, reading what Mary said. You don't give up. You never give up. And they might seem big, but they are nothing compared to God. Nothing. And it's beyond words, it's beyond description. And there's so many, you can think, oh gosh, there's so many evil people. Let me tell you, there are so many people acting in the spirit of the Holy Ghost. Um, and I can absolutely confirm that. There are so many that are working amazing, amazing things right now, always through history. And so you have to say, okay, never give up. And I'm going to do my part. I don't need to know who is, who's doing what, because see, it has to be beyond language. If you're communicating with each other, then the enemy will attack you, right? They'll attack. They'll manipulate and attack and put the lies and all that. But if everyone is working in their sphere of influence, doing the right thing, it all starts coming together without text messages and plans and this and that. The plan is all there. It's called the word of God. It's called righteousness. It's called doing the right thing. It's called the golden rule. You just got to do the esprit de corps. The esprit de corps is beyond language. It's a spirit. It's the Holy Spirit. And so this, and I didn't mean to even talk about this. I'm just so led to tell you that it's all coming together. And that's why we're getting all of this information. And the information is coming from what was meant to be in the first place. It's just a miracle. And God said that to Moses, right? God said that to Moses when Moses said, "Okay, well, who are you?" "I am who I am." You don't need to know more. You need to do the right thing. Take off your sandals. You're in a holy place. And you need to do the right thing because I am who I am. And that's my message for tonight. The enemy doesn't do the right thing. They plan, they conspire, they lie, and that's what's getting them caught. And they are absolutely caught in so many lies. And Ernest Christopher Grant was feeding us baloney. And Donna Sifford, and I want you to know that Donna Sifford also feeding us baloney. That those two were part of, and we haven't heard from it. Maybe it'll come, but they're part of the civil case against Walmart, right? They wanted to sue, I don't know, millions, I don't know, 1 million, I don't know how much, I don't know. But they wanted to sue and get money out of all of this after feeding us baloney. And I'm not saying that he didn't get injured. I'm saying and not even the El Paso Police Department confirmed that he was feeding us baloney, and the White House confirmed that he's a criminal. And Governor Abbott confirmed that he's not doing his job. And Veronica Escobar confirmed that she's not doing her job. And Beto O'Rourke confirmed that he's a snake. So, yeah. Thank you so much. Please pass this on. Thank you for your wonderful information. And I will be back tomorrow, God willing, or today, later on today. Hopefully, I'll be back before midnight. It's already 2:00 in the morning here. But this is, this is just how it has to be until, yeah, God's timing.